Hey everyone, this is Mike with On Point Preparedness. Starting tomorrow, it'll be about 2 weeks since I put out a video, and that is quite a long stretch for me because I can usually get a video out about every other day. So this one's going to be rather informal. It's going to be a catching up with On Point, if you will. And I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the personal things that happened which prohibited me from uploading videos, as well as tune you guys into some very important observations I made about the economy while traveling for the holidays. So to start, one thing that we all know is that the weather has been just nuts. You have 60 and 70 degree temperatures across the Midwest, East, and Southeast, and then you get some really bizarre tornadoes and blizzards in the West. And with regards to the warm spell, it has really prolonged the sickness season. So your flus and colds and GI stuff from the fall have really progressed in through the winter solstice, and tons of people are just sick. Myself and my family included. I have a 10-month-old and a 3-year-old, and I think my family has been sick 3 times over the past 4 weeks. But I first got sick about 4 weeks ago and was still putting out videos. Got my fair share of it, and it ran its course over the week. Wasn't too bad, but at the end of the week, I felt perfectly fine, felt healthy, with one big exception. Almost every time that I would eat, I would be in debilitating pain. It wouldn't matter really what I ate. It was just really, really bad, debilitating pain. And pretty scary thing because I've lost 8 pounds over the past 4 weeks, and especially if you try to do some self-diagnosis over the internet, you Google search your symptoms and the diagnoses always end up to be some of the most terrible things. But I have gotten checked out. I will talk about that a little bit later, but all the while I was in all this pain, I could not help but think, what if this happened to me in austere conditions? It's just not a pretty picture. And it's not the first time that I've thought about these things. Pretty much any time you get sick, you wonder what if you felt this way during a survival situation. And it's not good. And one thing we need to do is we really need to keep people in our thoughts and prayers that have these types of chronic conditions, especially those that have these types of conditions and are aware of the state of the world and the economy and the ticking time bomb that is among us. So, have a couple of acquaintances. One's a diabetic, some others have an organ transplant, and they all require medicine to stay alive. And they know that this whole system is going to break down sooner or later, and they cannot possibly stock up on enough meds to survive, nor do they think they're going to be able to have easy access to those meds when it collapses. And they've pretty much made their peace with God at this point. And that's just a very scary place to be in, to have to think that way. But good for them that they've been challenged that way and they've made their peace already. But really keep those people in your thoughts and prayers, because that's a pretty terrifying thing to think about, And I was thinking about that all the while I was in this really bad pain. So the main message for you guys is, even if you're healthy or if you have some questionable health issues, make sure you go ahead and get checked out, whether it's dental or medical or vision or anything like that. Just make sure you get checked out while times are still stable. The other thing with regards to GI stuff is, a lot of people like to store food that lasts a long time, like beans. But not a lot of people eat beans, and so you do not want to be in a situation where you're eating food that is more or less foreign to you and your body's going to reject it and you're going to be in the same kind of pain that I have been in over the last 4 weeks. You just don't want to be there. So I did get checked out by a couple different doctors, and I still have a couple different checkups. I don't think it's going to be anything major at the end of the day. Definitely scary though. And one thing was 2 different doctors, 2 different hospitals, 2 different cities. They both made me fill out a survey that raised one of my eyebrows. So about 3 years ago when I had my first child and we went to a pediatrician's office, I had read about this survey occurring, but hadn't really experienced myself, and that was the survey on whether you own guns in the home and how many and where they're stored and all that stuff. And doctors really have no business asking those questions, but they are still asking those questions anyways. And now that all medical records are being digitized because of Obamacare requirements, the government has access to all that information. But another question popped up during my doctor's visits, and that was demographics on religious affiliation. So they were asking whether I was Christian, Muslim, yada, 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 yada. And just, again, thought that was pretty odd because that's the first time I had been asked that question. I don't know about some of you if you've been asked that question over the past couple years, but again, just more intrusiveness into profiling individuals and digitizing that data. Just did not like that whatsoever. But all in all, they don't really have a diagnosis for what went on. Maybe it was just after effects of a bad bug. Who knows? Maybe it was something else. But right now I'm symptom-free, feeling pretty good. Need to get caught up on the news and everything because I've been completely unplugged for the last 2 weeks. I've just been with family, doing holidays, doing travels, and just trying to, not be in pain. But just really hope that this doesn't flare up again. Anywho, about traveling and about the economy, or this false veil of an economy, I went back home to my parents, traveled 4 hours to the other end of the state in Ohio, and have some very interesting observations. Before I left home, I lived there for decades, and it looked the same throughout my whole life there. It wasn't the most prosperous town or city, but it was still relatively stable. And even after I left home and went back for Christmas and Easter and all sorts of other holidays, it still had relatively the same appearance. But something changed this year. So I went home, and the whole landscape has just completely changed. So there is a mall there, and the mall is just completely dilapidated. It's mostly full of tiny, tiny little shops that have handcrafted things that are cheap. Most of your accessory stores, like furniture stores, jewelry stores, things that people don't necessarily need on a daily basis, every single one of them closed. The mall is just on its last life threads. And even here in my current city that I live in, not the city that my parents reside, 2007, when I moved here, there was a mall that was uber prosperous. It was one of the nicest malls that I think I'd ever seen. And now there's probably 2 stores left in it. It really will be one of those malls that you see pictures of where they're completely abandoned and there's trees growing out of them in about a decade. The economy is not doing good. Not doing good at all. And of course, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates in December, saying everything's on the road to recovery. They're just really setting up for an ultimate, utter failure. And it's just so evident. This channel, I do a lot of Bible prophecy and talk a lot about faith and talk a lot about prepping and things like that. With regards to Bible prophecy and end times, some of it can be very esoteric and out there. But I'll tell you what, guys, if any of that stuff ever seems a little bit too out there for you and you just want to ground yourself back to reality, just look at the world around you. I was shocked when I went back home and just saw the state of that city. And the other thing that I saw when I was there was around the mall, there was a quote-unquote homeless person or a beggar at 3 different street corners. And never had seen that in my whole entire history of living there or visiting there for holidays. Now, this isn't a big city. This is a very, very small city. Some of you may be wondering, oh, heck, there's homeless people in every city. But no, this one, especially the area, the uptown side of it, there was people on almost every street corner, and I was just floored by that. I was like, wow, this is really, really changing. And it really hits home, when you read these articles and you watch TV and you see all this stuff about the economy and it's Wall Street, not Main Street. But then when you see it with your own eyes, it's real. This is so very real. We just don't know when. It's not a matter of if anymore. It's just when this is all going to break down. And, I was talking to my parents about the whole trip over there and just was like, do you realize how drastic things have changed? And, they were in agreement. They're like, yeah, things have really gone downhill. And, they're storing food as well. I finally convinced them to go ahead and start preparing for what's coming, because it is definitely coming. I mean, all the analysts on Greg Hunter's USA Watchdog, when you look at technical fundamentals, they're all screaming that there is an absolutely utter, unprecedented, never in mankind's history crash coming up. And then you look with your own eyes at things happening in real life, and it's all just slowly starting to decay and shut down. If you haven't seen these types of things happening, you probably don't travel much. And this is something I've talked to with my coworkers, is our work is in a very prosperous part of town. It's actually sort of growing. There's malls and outlet centers sort of sprouting up at least once a year. But this is hardly the trend across the country. What you're seeing is just wealth being transferred and moving into certain areas. So if you see prosperous growth and people eating out and dining and everything, you're really living in a bubble. If you drive around a little bit, you really see where things are headed overall. Anywho, those were just a couple of the things I wanted to touch base with you guys on. Don't need to worry about me. I'm feeling good and taking some measures to make sure I'm fine in the future. But really need to get caught up on news and start putting out videos again, because like I said, I've been unplugged for the last 2 weeks. It's actually been awesome, aside from the fact that I've been in pain. But it's been awesome just to sort of unplug from all the things that are happening around the world, because that stuff can really start to get to you after a while. Anywho, we'll likely try to get some videos out this week, so stay tuned. And hope you guys had a good Christmas and upcoming New Year. God bless. Stay safe. This is Mike with On Point Preparedness. See you guys later.